Okay, so we're getting ready to talk about planned ignoring, and this is a really important component to understand when we're working with kids with challenging behaviors, because oftentimes the behaviors that we're working with are for attention, and when we give them attention, we're reinforcing that behavior. So it's necessary then to withhold that attention, or what we sometimes call planned ignoring. The problem is that people are not doing it right. So what does planned ignoring mean? What that really means is do not attend to the behavior. We want to make sure that you're not saying anything about the behavior, that you're not giving eye contact, that you're not using body language that shows that you're frustrated, or any of those kinds of things. So if a child is saying, "This is a bunch of crap," you wouldn't say, "That's not okay to say." Instead, you would redirect them back to what you want them to do, maybe reminding them of the reinforcement that's going to happen. So planned ignoring, I think the biggest thing for people to understand is that you ignore the behavior, not the child. I think a lot of people think about ignoring both the behavior and the child, and I see that sometimes where, kids are having problem behavior and people have decided that they're going to ignore it. So they're just almost like standing there kind of waiting for the child to get better. Sometimes even the look on people's face looks up, they're upset, and like we're just waiting for the kid to get better, when we really need to be proactive in working on how can we redirect them, how can we tell them what reinforcement is going to be available, and all of those different kinds of things. So let me give you an example of this. I was working with a teacher in the classroom. I felt like they were not using planned ignoring correctly. They had all had some behavior training, and when the kids were having problem behavior, they ignored it. But they kind of went into this, almost like a statue, like no facial expression, just kind of no response at all. And I was trying to tell the teacher, I'm like, you guys are ignoring the behavior, but you're also ignoring the child. And in most situations, people tell me this all the time, where they say, I try to ignore it, but I can't because they do this. So kids always know how to bring it to that next level. And so an example happened in the classroom. There was a little guy that had earned his free time, got all his work finished, and his free time was what he called building time. So that was his time to be able to use construction paper and popsicle sticks and glue, and he would make projects. He loved to build and make things, and he called it his building time. So I was in the classroom. It was a busy special education classroom, lots of kids, different things going on. This little guy had a paraprofessional, and so she was kind of, helping him to transition to his free time. And he went over to the two-door cabinet and got out a brand new container or package of pipe cleaners. And so he sits down at the table to use these pipe cleaners, and the certified teacher walks by, notices he has the pipe cleaners, and just says something like, "Oh, honey, don't use those, pick something else, please." And then went over to her group to kind of do some kind of math lesson or read a test to some kids. Well, I'm observing, and he's mad. He doesn't like that he can't use the pipe cleaners. So the first thing he does is he takes them and he throws them up against the wall. But then I notice his para and another para in the classroom don't respond. But they don't respond to anything. They just kind of stand there still, not responding to the behavior. So he walks around a little bit. He's got that look on his face like he's mad. And there was a box on the floor where they put recycled paper. It was like a cardboard box. And he goes over and he kind of looks at him and he kicks a big hole in it. And no one responded. Everybody was planned ignoring. It was this still face, kind of not attending. So then he looks around. You can tell he's still mad. He goes over and there's a dry erase board that had different things written on it. And so he's using his fist to erase it when he knows he's not supposed to, and looking at them with this look on their face. So, no one is responding. What I always try to tell people is that that's going to continue to escalate. So I went over and got the teacher. I said, this is what I'm talking about. I said, everybody's ignoring him, but they're ignoring the behavior and the child. And you can't do that. Things are going to get worse. So I said, what's going on with the pipe cleaners? She said, well, last time he used them, he used 150 of them in his project, and I don't have enough money to keep buying pipe cleaners out of my budget. And I said, okay, well then go tell him that. I don't want someone to say, hey, don't kick a hole in the box. Hey, don't throw the pipe cleaners. Stop erasing the dry erase board. That would be attending to the behavior by verbally indicating you need to stop and I don't like what you're doing. But no, we don't make any of those comments, but we still work with the child. We still talk to them. We still redirect them. I said, go over and tell them what's going on. And she said, I'm sorry you used all these pipe cleaners. I don't have enough in my budget. She kind of explained it to him. She said, but I went to the dollar store last night and I bought some other stuff in the cabinet you may not have noticed. Can I show it to you? Well, he wasn't like, woohoo, this sounds great, but he was redirected. He was like, okay, fine, I can maybe look at some of the other things that she has, and maybe that will be just as good. I always ask people the question, though, if everyone had continued with the ignoring and not responding at all to the child or the behavior, would that behavior have escalated to the point that someone would have had to respond? I would say most people would agree with me that it would. If people continue to not respond, he was going to do the next thing and the next thing, and typically kids get to the point where they do something that someone has to respond to. We just want to make sure that when we're ignoring the behavior, that we're not ignoring the child. And so that might look like redirecting a child. We talked about in some of the other webinars about increasing reinforcement using as soon as statement. As soon as you finish this, you can do this. And so it allows kids to be able to make some good choices about their behavior, especially when we remind them of reinforcement. Again, I see people sometimes just kind of standing there waiting for the child to get better. We talked about executive function skill deficits and the fact that these things really do affect how kids respond in stressful situations. Stress and anxiety make the executive function skills not work as well. Well, remember, with the executive function skills, there are things like emotional control and problem solving and all of those kinds of things. So if those things are not working as well, kids are going to struggle in those areas. So to stand and ignore and wait for them to get it together when they don't have the skills is probably not going to be very effective. Like, we need to go in. I oftentimes tell people in some of my training, remember the executive functions are part of the frontal lobe. And so we kind of talk about anxiety hijacking that frontal lobe. I tell people, you need to be the frontal lobe for them. You need to be the one that steps in and helps get them back on track because they don't have the skills to do it. So instead of standing here looking mad, waiting for them to get better, I'm going to say, hey, let's get back on track. What can I do? How can I help you? Using an as soon as statement. Hey, as soon as we get back on track, or let's go try to find something else. I understand that makes you frustrated. Any of those things to kind of help get them back on track. That's going to be a very important piece. So again, this is one more example. I had a little guy, and so he was walking down the hallway and he kept touching everything, and the para with him said, keep your hands to yourself, you're gonna mess up the art, and just kind of basically directing him. And so what did he do? Like, after she said that, he did 1, 2, 3 more, right? Like, it's almost like, well, you tell me not to, I'm gonna do it even more. And so I was trying to explain to her, is this effective, telling him not to touch all the papers hanging in the hallway? She's like, well, he does it almost every time. Exactly. Remember, we look at effective and ineffective. It's ineffective to tell him to stop. You're giving him attention and he's going to do it again. It's almost like, this is my way of interacting. However, the piece that I want to make sure people understand is that when we're ignoring, some people think you just let the kid destroy the room, knock 2 door cabinets over, hit you, and you're just supposed to stand there and take it. Absolutely not. That's where we do redirection. So you have a kid that's knocking all the papers over, you get in front of them and say, hey, tell me about, and you try to redirect them to talk about something different. Or you say, hey, as soon as we get this math finished, you get a break. What are you going to do? So whatever we can do to kind of redirect them, we're not going to say, hey, stop touching all the artwork on the wall, because that's what's increasing it. But it doesn't mean you just stand there and let them destroy things either. I've had that situation before where I've gone into a classroom and everything's all in pieces and everything, and they said they were ignoring the behavior. You can still redirect as well during that time.